been doing some hard traveling.
This weekend we drove to Black Mountain, North Carolina for the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance Conference, known as SERFA.
Where are we? So we're cutting across North Carolina under the belly of 40. And because last time we went to Asheville, there was a huge traffic jam.
For a few weeks we have been staying in Chatsworth, Georgia, about 30 miles south of Chattanooga. We passed through familiar towns like Ellijay, which is very popular in the apple picking season, and then we came into Murphy, North Carolina. We sometimes take a similar route when we're going to Gatlinburg through Cherokee, North Carolina. We are driving in North Carolina. We're headed to Black Mountain for the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance Conference, and the next big town is Franklin.
North Carolina, and I just want to check that I'm not having any trouble.
Okay, is it the
I'm sailing with a favorable wind. I'm a wave about to break on the
I've spent a fair amount of time in East Tennessee performing in Gatlinburg in the Blue Ridge Mountains, but I have to say the mountains that run through North Carolina are grandiose, and the peaks are so numerous. You don't spend long in a valley before you're driving up an incline again.
months ago.
We had the scenic pleasure of driving through the Nantahala National Forest, and we made time to stop at a lookout between Franklin and Waynesville. North Carolina has no shortage of good lookout views. We stopped a couple of times to enjoy them.
Hillsboro.
Listen up now. You made up your mind when
For 1.5 miles.
We're gonna have a nice hotel over there.
good enough.
It's going to be cute when they get it together.
They also have a nice little waterway, creek or something, river, small river.
Look down in there at all those folks down there walking around in the little part of the...
As we passed through the little up-and-coming town of Dillsboro, we found ourselves driving momentarily on a steep ridge. It was a road that went through the center of a neighborhood built on the side of a mountain. Suddenly things leveled out and we were back on the road toward Waynesville, the next larger town.
Here, go higher.
The conference was held at the YMCA Blue Ridge Assembly. I'm afraid I was remiss in not taking photos of the jams happening outside and some that were happening in the lobby at night. At Folk Alliance conferences, there are several tiers of showcases. The most prestigious showcases are the official showcases, which are determined by the board of directors. Then there's the guerrilla showcases, which have official hosts, and at some conferences, attendees book showcases in their hotel rooms. Conferences like these are usually attended by music industry personnel who may be able to help you in your career. But even if you're not a professional musician, these conferences build community through breakout jam sessions where anybody can call a tune. As for me, this year was my first year attending SERFA, and I didn't apply for an official showcase this time, but I was offered a guerrilla showcase that was all about traditional folk music and old songs. I also decided that I would apply to host a workshop. Because I was volunteering to host the workshop, I was granted a scholarship to attend the conference. The first thing we did when we arrived was head to the registration table to sign in and pick up our name tags and a booklet with maps and showcase listings. Mom and I walked around the building to get acclimated to where the showcase rooms would be, and when we came to the top floor, I was happily surprised when Joe Sonic, also known as Joltin' Joe, called out to me. I've known him over the internet for several years, but this was our first time meeting in person. He's always been so kind to play my music since I started releasing music in 2018. Joe hosts a show called Radio Nowhere on the streaming platform Folk Music Notebook. It was really nice to make that real human connection, and I appreciated it so much when he attended my showcase. When we arrived, there was a meet and greet happening downstairs. I quickly spotted the recognizable visage of Ron Olesko, He's the owner of Folk Music Notebook and host of the show Traditions on WFDU in New Jersey. Ron interviewed me about my Joan Baez tribute album back in 2020 and has also played my music over the years. He is a conscientious host and interviewer and shares my passion to help folk music continue thriving into the future. Ron gave us Folk Music Notebook t-shirts and said to take a picture of them in some special place. And you know we will. Mom had already booked our hotel room, but we hadn't gone there yet. My showcase was at 12:40 a.m., so we decided to leave and get some dinner and take some rest and relaxation after our long drive. The hotel had a very pretty view of the mountainside, and I asked Mom to take some photos. At around 9 o'clock, we returned to Blue Ridge Assembly. We were a little bit out of the loop, I'll have to admit. The official showcases were going on, but we stayed in the lobby and watched the jams. We also located the room where my showcase was being held. There were several other classrooms in the same hall, and I ran across Faith Seeney, who has a duo with her husband Dan and Faith. I met them at a Woodsong Song Farmers gathering in Berea, Kentucky several years ago. It was nice to see them again. I also met Abby Parks, who hosts a radio show called Folk Renaissance on WLJS at Jacksonville State University in Alabama. I've known her over the internet for a few years too, and it was really neat to finally meet up. She attended my showcase as well. We went to the Roots and Sources room when the showcases began and watched the host kick off the show. His name is Andy Cohen, and he's a country blues player who now lives in Memphis. A good place for a country blues player. Throughout his set, he wove in history and humor. Next on the bill was Nicholas Edward Williams. I met Nicholas about 2 years ago at his album release show for Folk Songs for Old Time's Sake. He's a Chattanooga artist who has garnered quite the following for his folk music project, American Songster, a podcast in which he explores the origins of folk songs in an engaging way and recreates the songs himself. Next up was Ash Devine. She played some lovely Appalachian songs by the Carter family, which woke me up since it was getting quite late by that time. She engaged Matthew Sabatella to play with her for a few songs as well. My mom and I have known Matthew for a few years, and he's actually the person who brought me on for the Roots and Sources showcase. We met him in 2019 in South Florida after attending his musical seminar at a university. Finally, at 12:20 a.m., it was my turn to showcase. I was told it was a nice early hour since these conferences tend to run all night into the wee hours of morning.
I'll just sing a song for the man.
The next morning, we were in pursuit of coffee. So at the recommendation of another artist at the conference, we went into the town of Black Mountain and located the Drippolator Coffee Shop. They made us a salted caramel latte, and we drank it sitting on a little stone wall overlooking the little art town. Having imbibed our jitter juice and taken in the general splendor of Black Mountain, we headed back to Surfa because it was nearing time for my clinic. It was a shared responsibility between another folk artist named Catherine Miles and myself, and we had a wonderful audience of learners who were attentive and interested in the vocal mechanism, how it operates, and how to become a better singer. The classroom was absolutely full, and our clinic was a great